It's like the idea of grief is the idea that something is lost. And I don't believe we're ever lost. We transition from the life on the physical plane back into the non-physical, the spiritual, realm. But but we don't go anywhere. We're still here. And I still feel my sister's presence at morning.
This is a public service announcement. This is the Walk-In Victory podcast. Here we have conversations that provides insight on how you can craft and design your future from the inside out. If that's not you, then tune into another bleeping podcast. Everyone else, enjoy the show. And here's our host.
And good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know what time you're listening to this Walk-In Victory podcast, but you're here again. And we just want to bid you farewell. Speaking of victory walk and farewell, when we talk about mindset or mindset shifting or mindset development, this is like three different things. Most people try to put it all in one. They're really not. Mindset development is the things that you do to begin to develop the mindset for what it is that you want to do. Like athletes who are really good, they begin to develop the mindset around their craft at an early age, or the hours of time that they put into the development of the craft. And that means the little tedious, the footwork. Anybody can go out and shoot a jump shot, but they know the footwork and the repetition. They're developing the mind for a specific craft. Mindset shifting means that I've developed my mindset for this craft. I'm injured now, and the doctor say I cannot go back and play basketball again. So I have to shift my mindset from not unlearn. I'm not unlearning. However, the thing that I developed my mindset for is no longer beneficial. The knowledge is beneficial, so I can become a commentator. I can become, so I've done it, develop my mind in something else. So I now have to shift the thing. I may not be ideal or may not be what I want, but I have to shift. And shifting sometimes is difficult for people. Development is difficult, but it takes discipline to develop. Shifting takes flexibility. Most people get depressed because they're not actually getting what they want. Oh, I went to school all these years, and then they're like, the economy's bad. Wah. So instead of shifting, they make excuses. Transformation, however, is I developed this mindset, shift it, and I'm maybe doing well in the thing that I think that I want to do. And then I realize who I really am called to be. And maybe that path that I was on led me to the place of my realization. Now I have to transform from what it is that I want it to be to who I am really supposed to be. And that transformation is scary because you may spend 20, 30 years in the industry and wake up one morning and realize that you're misplaced. So now I have to transform. One, I have to psychologically accept the fact that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Now I have to develop the tools all over again. Some of the things may be transferable. I have to develop again. Then I have to transform mindset, transform shifts. And that's in good industries, but transformation happens in finances, transformation happens in our health, diets, transformation happens in our relationships. Some parent may be listening and the children are all gone and you gave all that you had to your children. Now you have to transform. You wake up, boom, nobody's in the house. The house is quiet. Because that's all you're running from. But every time you look around the corner, guess what? You are in there looking. It's not like running someone that's chasing. You can't run from your purpose because your purpose goes to bed with you, wakes up with you, self-talks to you. Anyway, we always like to sit you out to feet of the masters. And today we are sitting with Miss Ramona. How are you?
I'm doing great, Naran. How are you?
I'm great. If you don't mind telling our audience a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do, and we can jump right into it.
Absolutely. Well, I was living what I thought was a great life and my life partner of 24 years passed away, and
Mm,
I was 55 years old, and I was I was a completely different person back then. I mean, I was not adapting well. I was not shifting my mindset like you were describing. I did not have a transformation yet. And when my partner died, that changed everything for me. I felt like I had been kind of looking for like a spiritual paradigm of some sort, and the kinds of shift. And I was doing a lot of shift kind of more superficially, but I was always looking for something. And after that death, I was ready to actually check out, to tell you the truth. And I was actually composing my suicide note, and the phone rang. And it was Lordella and my partner's best friend. And Lordella was like, "Oh, I just heard. I'm so sorry. And I was like, "Yeah," and I don't remember exactly what I was saying, but she said, "You gotta stop thinking like that right now." And I was like, "I don't know how to, Lordella." I mean, I'm 55. I've been trying to change the way I think, control the way I think my whole life. And she said, "Well, have you ever heard of Abraham Hicks?" And I was like, "No, what's that?" And so we started talking. I had a complete spiritual awakening over that. I wouldn't say right at that moment. At that moment, all I had was a piece of hope. That's all I really had. And she sent me a bunch of CDs that she had. She sent me to buy a couple of books. I started meditating. I started looking online and listening to a lot of more spiritual material. And I had this over the next month or so. I had this huge awakening, and I decided that I would give myself a year. I still give myself permission to leave the planet, if it didn't work, because it just felt so bad to be in such a deep grief place. But by the end of that year, I had completely turned my life around, and that was 10 years ago. And so I've been on this upward trajectory ever since. And then about 5 years ago, I started receiving infinite intelligence, very similar to Abraham Hicks. And so now I help other people with their paradigm shifts, with their spiritual awakenings, with their next level transformation. And it's very satisfying work. I do that privately and in a small group. And that pretty much brings us up to today. Oh, and I wrote a book last year. And that pretty much brings us up to today. You're all caught up. You know everything there is to know.
well, well, see, that's an amazing story, and I'm pretty sure that a few years ago you probably wouldn't have been able to really dissect the story like that. You probably could have, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. And my partner died, and I didn't know what to do. That probably was the meat to the story, right? And most people are fascinated by the trauma because it sells. Like the everybody starts crying because we can all
Yeah,
relate to that.
sure.
But to champion and to put the comma in that, like it wasn't by chance that the phone rang. It wasn't by chance that you had that conversation. It
Absolutely.
wasn't by chance.
Yo,
None
yeah.
of those things happen by chance. How do you relate now to the new you? And that's what transformation actually brings about. It brings about a new us, a new you from
Yes.
the old you. If you sat down and you wrote a contrasting checks on each side, what did that look like for you?
Well, it was kind of like night and day, I would say. So the very, that the dark night of the soul kind of a thing, which is where I was. I mean, I really believed that my only source of unconditional love had just died.
Mhm.
So I felt like I was going to be bereft for the rest of my life. That was my opinion back then, right? I was sure of that because I had spent 55 years looking for something beyond me and beyond us and hadn't been able to find it. So, and we had this magnificent relationship, and so to feel like the only source of unconditional love just left, that was a pretty dark, space to be in. Now, contrast to a couple of years ago, well, let's see, it's about 4 years ago now. My sister, my brother-in-law shot and killed my sister. And he's in prison now. And but so having a sibling, that I was really close to be murdered like that, that would be like, a good way of comparing those two events. They're not exactly comparable, but they're kind of comparable, right? So the death of my sister, because I was 6 years into my transformation or whatever you want to call it, I responded completely differently. I knew that she was in a better place. from that point on because it was just not in a great place. Neither one of them were in a great place when this all happened, and they hadn't been for quite some time. We'd been trying to help them, but alcoholism is a terrible disease, and they both had it, and there was just nothing we could do to help them. And so my response to all of that was so much peace and serenity and acceptance. I was able to go to be with my family. I was there for 2 months after this happened, and I was able to help be a source of solace and soothing for the rest of my family in a way that I could have never done before earlier in my life. I just didn't have it. I didn't own it. It wasn't in me, you know? And so there's a huge, that lightness compared to that darkness to me kind of says it all. It's like the idea of grief is the idea that something is lost. And I don't believe we're ever lost. We transition from the life on the physical plane back into the non-physical, the spiritual, realm, but we don't go anywhere. We're still here. And I still feel my sister's presence. I still feel my partner's presence. So that shift right there to me just says it all. Night and day, night and day.
Man, that's a lot to unpack there. One thing is most people feel like the event, you lost your partner, and they felt like that the event is the dark place. Can you talk about the fact that the event is probably the thing that throws you over the top, but this is the mindset that it was, and it's not the event?
Absolutely. It's absolutely. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like when somebody really close to you passes away, your response to it is the only difference. Like, because we're all gonna die, right? People die every day. Everywhere you go, people are dying. Organic entity dies. We birth, we live, we die. That's the whole life cycle. That's called living. And death is such a huge, big part of it, right? But we don't see it that way. We see it as separate. And I saw it as separate back then. But now I understand it's all just part of the cycle. And so, yes, absolutely. My mindset, my transformation determines how I respond to anything that happens in my environment, anything that happens to my physical body, anything anybody says to me, anything anybody does anywhere, whether it's war on the other side of the world or, an attack right here at home or the most beautiful, set of wildflowers or, the house burned down. Like it almost doesn't matter what happens. I know that sounds kind of strange. And of course it does matter, but in the bottom line, it doesn't matter what actually happens. When you've got this transformed mindset or heart set. I like to call it actually heart set because so many people try to do mindset just in their heads, and you got to get it back into your body
Mm.
in order to give it the full power. So for me, it's heart set. But yeah, the mindset work, the personal development work makes all the difference in the world as to how you interpret and experience every single thing in life. Every single thing.
Um, let's move past centered around your personal, and I really appreciate you sharing that. How are
Sure.
you now able to take this and turn it into an entrepreneurial experience where most people think about businesses when you're starting a business, you're looking for a need and looking to meet a need, right? And that's in goods or services or things as such. But you went a different direction. You were able to take all of your life experiences and all of your transformation and now help others and share with others. What was happening when you began to think that this is the type of business that I want to be in?
Well, about 5 years ago, I was walking with a friend in the woods. We were out hiking. We were talking about a bunch of stuff, and I had this knowing come upon me that I was meant to start receiving divine intelligence on behalf of others, similar to how Esther Hicks receives Abraham Hicks. And up until then, I had never even considered it. In fact, I knew for a fact I couldn't do it. It's a longer story why, but I just really didn't know that there was anything that I would do. And then all of a sudden, I realized that I was going to do it. And then I did do it for some friends about a week later. And I enjoyed it so much. And I could tell that there was really something there. Like I knew things that there was no way for me to know. I had perspectives on some of the things that they were asking that wouldn't be like my human perspective. And so I sent out emails and texts to people that I know and that I already knew Abraham Hicks. And so they were familiar with the concept, comfortable with the concept. And I just said, hey, I'm doing this thing. Does anybody want in? And so people started coming and, I just for free, just to practice, to see what was going on, to help people. And it was so impactful for so many people and so enjoyable to me. And it was very healing to me. It was like the deepest meditation you could, or prayer that you could ever go into, like this sense of serenity and the sense of healing. And sometimes I would cry, and I would have trouble breathing. Like I had a very physiological response to the whole thing. And so I just kept doing it and it grew and it grew and it grew. And then I started thinking, well, I would really like to be that person that can provide this service, because when I first started listening to Abraham, I wanted to take like private lessons, like with Esther Hicks, because my first career was as a classical trumpet player. So whenever I wanted to know something, I would find somebody who knew how to do it. I'd pay their private lesson rate, whatever that was, and I'd go and sit with them and I'd say, I want to be able to do this and this and this. And they'd say, okay, well, show me what you got. And then they show me what they got. And then by the end of the lesson, I knew how to do it. So that's what I wanted for this spiritual awakening. I wanted somebody to just teach me how to do it real quick, right? Well, there was nobody available to do that. Esther Hicks doesn't take private clients. She doesn't even do small groups. She only does these huge group seminars. So I had been going to all these seminars and they were really great. I was listening to the material on YouTube. I mean, I was growing by leaps and bounds, but I always wanted like a personal mentor. So then I started thinking, well, why don't I be the personal mentor for others that I wanted, and see if anybody wants that, see if that's helpful to anybody. Maybe it was just me that wanted that, but no, it wasn't just me. So
Mm.
as soon as I started, mentioning it online, and a little bit, haven't done really much advertising, but mostly word of mouth and whatnot, but just some organic posts and stuff. And people just started coming to me. And then I decided I wanted a website. And so I learned how to create a website. I had never made a website before. And it just kind of grew. It just has grown very organically, very naturally. And to the point today, I didn't start doing groups until about a year and a half ago, August of last year, well, April of last year with a cohort, and then by myself in August. And so the group is still fairly new. The group is fantastic. We meet twice a week. There's a huge amount of momentum going, and people kind of leapfrog over each other, so that the results are good and fast and easy, and it's very enjoyable. It's a very intimate time together. And so I've just kind of followed my bliss, follow my joy, as they say. And it has just unfolded, 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 and it continues to unfold. So
That's
yeah.
amazing. The fact that you were willing to step out and to do the work, realizing that there was a hole in the space and it's something that you can actually fill a void of. Looking
Yeah.
back at your entire lifespan as an artist, now as an entrepreneur, do you see any symmetry between your intuition, playing an instrument? Sometimes you get a feel of the room and you may have a set song list and you're like, this song list may not work. Some people who, if they don't have that intuitiveness, they'll go with the song list, even though the room is calling for something else. Have you always been
Yeah.
insightful as an artist? And do you think that helped you tap into that level of insightfulness as a leader?
That's a really great question. So I would say that I always had the intuitiveness and the insightfulness, and I would probably say we all do.
Mm,
However, mine would only come out in certain places or in certain ways. And when I look back on it, I can say when I felt safe, it came out. When I
mm,
didn't feel safe, I kept it down. I didn't know I was doing that, but so that's just in retrospect. But so when I think about like performing on a stage, I could feel the audience respond to me.
mm.
Absolutely. I could feel the audience respond to me. And people would come up afterwards with tears in their eyes saying, oh my God, that was so beautiful, But I was uncomfortable talking to them because I didn't have my trumpet between me and them,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah, the
that was a
trumpet was.
safety. It was like right? Like a little barrier, like a little wall. So, and I remember the first time that I played very, very expressively. It was something that I had gotten the correction from my private teacher. And, the instruction was, to play more lyrically to me. And, this part of me just kind of came out in this particular solo I was working on. But it was just in the private room, right? And then I went out into the orchestra when it was time to actually play it, and I went back to the old way. And then my teacher was like, "Why did you do that?" I was like, "Well, I'm not gonna play like that in front of everybody. That would be like taking my clothes off in front of people." And, so I worked through that. So I can look back over my life and see when I was safe, I was able to feel and express my inner being, what I would say now, my inner being, my inner self, my true self. When I was not feeling safe, I was shut down. I had a lot of barriers, a lot of walls, a lot of armor, I would say. Yeah.
And for artists like myself, I did music for years, and you get so used to doing it a certain way, right? Even if you create bad habits, you're so used to doing it a certain way. Once you expand, you're like, oh, I can do that in practice, but I don't know if I really can do that out, out in the open. I don't know if I can do that in the public. And
Right.
I've always admired people who are willing to take chances. Now that your trumpet has been removed, do you see yourself as a risk taker? Let's go like when you were writing a book. How was that? Because you're going into something that's very vulnerable. There's a spiritual transformation or transfer when you're writing, and this is a very vulnerable piece. What did you have to do mentally to help you prepare? There's no trumpet, there's no audience, it's just you, the paper, and your thoughts. How was that process for you?
Well, I feel like that process started long before I wrote the book. Like as soon as I
Mm,
had the spiritual awakening, right? So I've been releasing my need for barrier, my releasing, any fears. I've been releasing vulnerability, for years now. And so by the time I was writing this book, and I'm very vulnerable in the book. I speak very frankly about my past and things that happened to me. I have like over 40 case studies in the actual book, and I'm two or three of them. So I'm very direct and open about how things affected me or what I did about this or, how I changed or whatever. And most people would call that pretty vulnerable, but it didn't feel vulnerable to me. I almost never feel really vulnerable anymore because I've worked so much on releasing because see, the world is pure love. The world is pure good. And so as you recognize that more and more, and this is what I call my spiritual awakening, is starting to understand that I am pure good. You are pure good, which means there's nothing to fear. And it also means that you and I are the same. So it would be illogical for me to fear you or to
mm,
fear anybody. Or I don't fear death. I don't really fear anything anymore. And I mean, with exceptions, I'm still human, but I mean, in general, my fears and my vulnerabilities have healed. I mean, they're almost like that's a trauma that you want to heal because we're not born with any fears other than the fear of falling. From what I understand, babies have a fear of falling and that's it. So we have to learn all those other fears. All those other fears come from, our conditioning, our environment, and somebody hitting us or yelling at us or, don't get enough food, sometimes or whatever it is. We build up these traumas and fears. But if we know how to let them go, then they have no power over us. I mean, I had all kinds of horrible things happen in my childhood that created all that trauma and fear that I was living later as an adult. But I have successfully let like the vast majority of all that go. And we can all do that. And I would encourage anybody who's listening right now, start now. Start now and start letting that stuff go.
there's no,
Because life is way too short. Life is way too short to be carrying all that stuff around. Man, I wish I'd done this back when I was 20.
yeah,
I went into therapy when I was 18 years old. As soon as I left home, I went into therapy because I knew how messed up I was. And it helped a lot. But it didn't really let it go. I learned how to cope. That's what I learned. I learned how to have barriers and walls. But now, yeah, I just really don't. I mean, I would love to hear somebody's response if they'd read my book. Do you think that was really a vulnerable? I mean, I've had a couple people that didn't know me that well, like reviews on Amazon or whatever say, that the author gets very vulnerable. But to me, it didn't feel vulnerable. It just didn't feel vulnerable.
is that in line with your theme to think less and thrive more? Explain to
Yes.
the audience, what does that mean when you hear that? When you hear me saying it to you?
Yeah. Yeah. So what it means to me is we, especially Americans, not every culture on the earth, but most Americans, we spend so much time up in our heads. We're strategizing, we're worrying, we're regretting. Like when we spend any time in the past or any time in the future, we're thinking. We're not being, we're thinking. We're not feeling, we may be feeling a feeling, but it's a response to our thinking. Like, I'm worried about tomorrow. I'm worried I'm going to run out of money, or worried I'm going to lose my job. I'm focused in the future when I'm doing that. I'm not
Mm,
right here, right now.
mm,
And when I'm regretting the past, or, angry at somebody for something that they did in the past, I'm
mhm.
not right here, right now. So it's all about coming back to right here, right now, like right
Right.
here, right now. The
Mm,
best way to do that is to feel in your body, to actually feel your emotions in your body. So if you're thinking about feeling, you're not actually feeling. If you're
hmm,
feeling, then you're feeling. So that's the think less part. And then the less you think and the more you feel, the more you thrive. Because the more you're in the present moment, the more all of the abundance that's free in this world for all of us, the way all of that abundance can come to us. But you've got to be in the present to receive it, because the present is all we've got. The right now is all we've got. Everything else is an illusion. So if you're thinking, you're focused on an illusion.
mm. And I'm glad that you point that out, because most people, we're trained to think futuristically. What do you want to be when you grow up? It starts from an early age. Like,
Very early. Yeah.
yeah. So we're trained to worry about tomorrow. Go to school. The first thing that they ask you, well, what do you want to major in? I don't know. Like, can I just get some more
Yeah.
training? Right? so,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so it has to be a total shift away from years of training. And some, it took you up to 55, but some, it takes a lifetime for people to understand this. How are you now coaching and relating this and helping people to get over the years of training that they had and to unthink about the way that they think?
Well, it's all about getting back into your body, which
Mm,
I teach primarily through the breath. There's lots of different ways to do it. There's moving meditations. There's lots of different ways to do it. But one of my favorites is the breath. And that's probably because I spent so many years as a trumpet player. I mean, I've actually been to tuba players and trombone players and flute players to learn how to breathe better, like whole lessons just on breathing. So I've spent a lot of my life being aware of my own breathing just for whatever reason. Like a lot of people say, you take a deep breath and they go, "Huh?" And their shoulders come up and their chest comes out. Well, that's not where you breathe. Watch any baby breathe. Watch any animal breathe. We breathe from our bellies, but we're so concerned about looking thin that we can't possibly, breathe into our bellies. So like that's an example, right? So when you're not breathing well, you're not in your body. When you don't love your body and trust your body, like think about all the women who are struggling with weight issues these days. And it's got nothing to do with so many different things that we think it has to do with, right? But it makes us afraid of our bodies because, we go on a diet, we can't lose weight. Now I don't trust my body. Now I'm mad at my body, or I'm looking at my body in the mirror and saying, ew, disgusting. We can't get into our bodies. So one of the things I teach is body love. And
mm,
then I teach breathing, and I teach different kinds of meditation. Like and this could be a walking meditation, it could be dancing yoga, swimming, taking a shower, doing the dishes. There's all kinds of contemplative things that we can do with our bodies that get us like back in touch with our bodies. Like everything that you can do to get back in touch with your body. But I just recommend starting with the breath, especially 2 inhales and then an exhale. If you do that 2 times, you're gonna feel so much better. Doesn't matter what else is going on around you. Now, if the house is burning, you might have to do that breathing thing like over and over and over again because you're facing a compelling reality. But so start sometime, well, first of all, start now. And second of all, practice whenever you have like free space, like you go into the bathroom, right? You close the door, you got a little bit of free space there. No matter what else is going on, you got a little bit of private time. Right, just breathing. Feel what that feels like in your body. That's the first place to start. And there's a lot of more advanced techniques, but that's the place to start for me.
so for me, and I like that technique. It actually helps to bring down anxiety really, really fast. That's the
Yes.
fastest way, because I teach mindfulness and breath work and yoga, mindful movements. And when you're dealing with people who are, first, if you're listening, the stuff works fast. It's not like it's something that you're going to have to be doing for a whole year. and then you start to see the benefits or feel the benefits. If you do a proper breathing technique or for a certain amount of time, you're going to feel it in your body because the body's actually craving for proper breathing. And
Yes.
it's like,
Yes.
the body's like, oh my God, where have you been? So when you do it, the body rewards you for it. Secondly, we've been
Yes.
conditioned because we're conditioned to think ahead. We're always living in a heightened state of anxiety, heightened state of anxiety because we're worried
Yes.
about, and even if you're thinking ahead and you're not worried about it, right? You don't know that you're worried about it because your body's
Yes.
so conditioned to be in that state of flux, in that state of fear, fight or flight. When we start to
Yes.
pull back from that, we start to realize how tense our body was, or how effective, how much it affected us. When you start to see people who've never been introduced to these practices, never been introduced to these simple techniques that can grow out to be more complex, and you see that their life start to shift, how does that make you
Well, it feels fantastic. And the most of the people that I work with actually started that shift before I ever met them. And they implemented a lot of these techniques on their own or even with other people. And they started to get really great results. Like they started feeling better and they started getting, more abundance coming in. They're starting to see more synchronicities, whatever it is. And then they reach a kind of a plateau. Most of us hit some sort of a plateau or a block. I've had people say, I feel like I've got one of those glass ceilings. Like I can
feel?
see where I want to go, but I can't get there. I'm using all the same techniques. I've doubled down on all my practices and nothing's happening. So that's usually when they end up with me because I work with people with big desires, people who are leaders of some sort, consultants and coaches and teachers and healers and public speakers, any people who want to make a big impact on the world, and many people who are already making a big impact on the world. But there's this sense like that it could be so much more, and I don't know how to get there. Like these previous tools don't seem to work anymore. And that's when, because you can stay completely in your mind, but if you meditate every day, and if you do certain things, you will start, you start breathing like we're talking about, you'll immediately feel better. But if you don't know how to generate momentum, generate and then maintain and then accelerate your momentum, if you don't know how to bathe yourself in unconditional love on a regular basis, because we don't get unconditional love from this world, not for very often. It's all from the non-physical and it all comes through us. It doesn't come to us, through, I mean, it can come, as an emblem of a tree or a church or whatever it is, but we've got to let it in. And so when we start allowing that love in on a regular, it's the reason why my group meets twice a week, because that momentum is so important. So there are some key differences that need to be in place in order for all of those basic processes that help so much at first to take you to that next level. And that's really where I specialize. And you talk about satisfying to see somebody come in and really like know what they want, or maybe they don't know what they want, but they know they want something, and to figure that out, to have that come to them organically and for them to start experiencing it and to start to be it and then to start to receive everything that they wanted. It's so satisfying. It's beyond words. It's really, really, really satisfying work.
Well, I told everybody we set you at the feet of the masters. This is Walk in Victory, where we transform lives from the inside out. Most people are looking for tangible transformations, but true transformation starts from within. My last question for you: what books have impacted you or influenced you? It doesn't have to be self-help. It doesn't have to be about breathing. It could be any book, nonfiction or fiction. You were sitting down and you said, I recommend that you read this book. What would it be?
Just one?
Nah, you can give us a few.
Gosh.
Not just one. You can give us a
O-
few.
Okay, I'm going to give you two. I'm going to give you two. One is Esther Hicks, Ask and It Is Given. That is like their basic book, and it kind of outlines their whole approach. And then it has 22 processes in there. So if you're kind of towards the beginning of your journey, those processes are fantastic. They're really good. and they're helpful depending on where you are and where you're going. You choose one or two of them and make them your own. And the other one is the 4-hour work week, which is really old now at this point, but
Right.
it was transformational for me on a different level. It really kind of opened me up professionally or businessly. I'm not really how to say it. And then I think that was that being in place for as long, because I had probably read that maybe 10 years before, my spiritual transformation. So I had a kind of a life transformation and then a spiritual transformation. And so I recommend those two books. Those are my two choices right now.
There you have it,
It's
everybody.
mine.
Yes.
That's mine. I want to add mine. From lonely to fearless. From lonely to fearless. You
From-
can find it on Amazon.
There you have it, everybody. Listen, all of Ramona's information is in the description on this episode. If you are listening and on a stream or whatever, and you don't have that, you can go to our website, walkinvictory.me, and there Miss Ramona has her own landing page, and on the landing page are all of the links. If you need a clarity call, if you want to get that book, you should get the book and support. If you just need to understand and want to follow on social media to get those messages, those downloads to help you get into your present place, go and follow her right now. Not only that, we ask that you hit like and subscribe if you're listening for the first time. And if you're listening on a platform where you can leave a review, 5 stars review go a long way. Help us to get these stories out into the algorithms and out to the world. And if you're not listening on a platform where you can leave a review, again, go to our website and do so there. Don't walk with your head down. Don't walk feeling lonely or feeling that unconditional love is not something that is accessible. We walk with our heads up, but most of all, we walk in victory. Enjoy the rest of your day. By the time you're listening to this, Happy New Year. Peace.
Thank you, Noran.
Thank you. Thank you.